Deep within the vastness of space, at the edge of the Sol system, something remarkable occurred. The radiant blue-white glow of human ships caught the attention of the Galactic Confederation's scout vessels. Their sleek, crystalline ships shimmered like stars against the dark canvas of space as they approached the human fleet. Inside the command center of the Confederation flagship Crystal Dawn, Admiral Dae-Ho Kim stood tall, his silver uniform gleaming under the soft ambient lighting. His eyes widened as he studied the detailed scans of the human vessels appearing on the holographic displays before him. "Impossible," he muttered, adjusting his collar as he leaned forward. The data couldn't be right. These ships were using nuclear fusion drives, basic armor plating, and what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons. The technology level was so far behind Confederation standards that he had to run the scans 3 times to confirm the readings. Sun Mei Park, his second in command, approached with quiet steps. Her own expression mirrored his disbelief as she reviewed the data. "Admiral, these readings suggest their technology is centuries behind our baseline requirements for spacefaring civilizations." The Admiral paced the command deck, his footsteps echoing in the hushed chamber. Other crew members exchanged glances, some struggling to hide their amusement. "These humans still use physical projectiles," he remarked, gesturing at the display. "Look at these power readings. Their energy output is barely enough to maintain stable faster-than-light travel." The human ships, though considerably larger than the scout vessels, looked bulky and inelegant compared to the smooth, organic lines of Confederation design. Their hulls were marked with what appeared to be primitive identifying marks, letters and numbers in the human writing system. Despite the overwhelming evidence of human technological inferiority, diplomatic protocols had to be followed. The Confederation Council, in its wisdom, had decided to extend an invitation to Earth to join their alliance. Many council members viewed it as a charitable act, a way to guide a young species toward proper technological development. The meeting took place aboard the Crystal Dawn's Grand Reception Hall. Captain Jae-Won Lee, chosen as Earth's representative, walked into the chamber with her head held high. Her blue uniform, though simple by Confederation standards, was immaculate. She couldn't help but notice the barely concealed smirks and subtle whispers among the alien diplomats. The Confederation representatives sat around a circular table that seemed to float in midair, supported by anti-gravity technology that made human innovations look like children's toys. Captain Lee took her assigned seat, maintaining her composure even as she heard one diplomat whisper to another about the quaint design of her uniform's rank insignia. Admiral Kim stood to deliver the formal invitation. "On behalf of the Galactic Confederation, we extend membership to the human race. We look forward to guiding your species toward proper technological advancement." His tone carried the weight of centuries of assumed superiority. Captain Lee listened to the translation through her earpiece, noting the subtle condescension in the Admiral's voice. Yet she remained graceful and dignified as she accepted the invitation on behalf of Earth. "We are honored to join the Confederation," she responded, her voice clear and steady. "Humanity looks forward to learning from and contributing to this alliance." As the ceremony concluded, the reception hall filled with various species mingling and discussing the newest addition to their alliance. Captain Lee stood by a viewing window, gazing at the distant Earth shining like a blue jewel in space. She overheard snippets of conversations, most revolving around how primitive and admirable human technology was. A young Confederation officer approached her, curiosity evident in his many-faceted eyes. "Is it true your ships still rely on physical ammunition? How do you manage space combat with such basic weapons?" Lee smiled diplomatically, remembering her briefing on handling such questions. "We find our current technology serves our needs quite well," she replied, leaving the officer to puzzle over her response. As the gathering continued, Admiral Kim watched the humans with a mixture of amusement and pity. He had no idea that this day would later be remembered as the moment the Confederation made its greatest miscalculation about a species' true capabilities. The humans, for their part, simply continued smiling, knowing that sometimes being underestimated could be the greatest advantage of all. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Confederation buzzed with worried voices. 3 standard cycles had passed since Earth joined their ranks, and now a crisis loomed over their carefully maintained trade routes. The massive crystal displays showed red warning markers spreading across star charts like a disease, each point marking another pirate attack. Commander Hae-Nul Cho stood at the center of the chamber, his normally pristine uniform showing signs of fatigue. He had just returned from a failed attempt to protect a convoy from raiders. The pirate ships, equipped with advanced shield technology, had simply laughed off the Confederation's energy weapons. "Another transport fleet lost," he reported, his voice heavy. "The pirates have adapted their shields. Our energy weapons barely leave a mark." He gestured to the damage reports floating in the air around him. "They're growing bolder with each success." The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. These weren't simple raiders. They operated sophisticated vessels that could match or exceed Confederation military ships. Their shield technology had evolved to resist the standard energy weapons that had kept peace in the galaxy for centuries. Admiral Kim rubbed his temples, the stress evident on his face. "Our primary defense fleets are tied up protecting the core systems. We cannot spare enough ships to patrol the outer trade routes effectively." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Trade was the lifeblood of the Confederation, and if they couldn't protect their merchants, the entire economy would suffer. The pirates knew this and were exploiting it perfectly. Commander Cho cleared his throat, drawing attention back to himself. "I have a proposal," he said, straightening his shoulders. "Let the Terran Defense Force patrol our sector. Their ships are ready, and their crews are eager to prove themselves." The suggestion hung in the air for a moment before Lieutenant Yujin Kang broke into a laugh that she quickly tried to disguise as a cough. Other council members didn't bother hiding their amusement. The idea of sending primitive human ships against these advanced pirates seemed like a cruel joke. "Commander," Lieutenant Kang said, her voice dripping with condescension, "your concern for our trading routes is admirable, but this suggestion is impractical." She pulled up an image of a human destroyer alongside a pirate vessel. "They're primitive ships against modern pirates. We appreciate the offer, but we cannot risk losing human lives in such a futile endeavor." The council chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Captain Ji-Won Lee, who had been quietly observing from her seat, finally spoke up. Her voice was calm and measured, cutting through the chatter like a blade. "Then you won't mind if we protect our own trading vessels." The room fell silent again, but this time with uncertainty. Captain Lee rose from her seat, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. "Earth has significant investment in these trade routes. If the Confederation cannot protect our merchants, we have every right to defend our own interests." Admiral Kim leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Captain Lee, while we appreciate your people's courage, sending your ships would be tantamount to suicide. These pirates have technology far beyond your capabilities." "Perhaps," Lee responded, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "But since you believe our ships are no threat, surely there's no harm in letting us try. After all, we would only be risking our own vessels." The council members exchanged uncertain glances. They had backed themselves into a corner. To deny the humans permission would suggest they feared something from these primitive ships. To grant it would at least shift some responsibility away from the Confederation's overtaxed forces. After a long moment of deliberation, Admiral Kim nodded slowly. "Very well. The Terran Defense Force may patrol their own trade routes. But," he added, raising a finger, "do not expect Confederation support if you encounter difficulties. We cannot spare resources for rescue operations." Captain Lee's smile widened just slightly. "Of course, Admiral. We wouldn't dream of imposing on your resources." She bowed slightly and returned to her seat, leaving the council members to wonder if they had just made a terrible mistake. As the meeting adjourned, Commander Cho caught up with Captain Lee in the corridor. "That was well played," he said quietly. "But are you sure your ships can handle these pirates?" Lee's eyes twinkled with something that might have been amusement or might have been determination. I suppose we'll find out soon enough, won't we? She paused before adding, sometimes the best way to learn about someone's capabilities is to let them show you. The commander watched her walk away, wondering if perhaps the Confederation had underestimated these humans more than they realized. But surely, he thought, their primitive projectile weapons and basic shields couldn't possibly stand against modern pirate vessels. Could they? The stars shone brightly over the Seoul shipyards as the massive form of the HMS Baekdu slid out of its construction dock. Its dark hull absorbed and reflected starlight in equal measure, creating an almost predatory appearance. Unlike the smooth, artistic lines of Confederation vessels, the Baekdu was all angles and purpose, built for war rather than beauty. Captain Meira-song watched from the observation deck as the final power tests lit up sections of the ship. The massive railgun batteries, each capable of accelerating projectiles to near relativistic speeds, stood out against the hull like sleeping giants. Point defense turrets dotted the surface, ready to swat away incoming threats. "She's ready, Captain," the chief engineer reported, handing over the final system checks. Every weapon, every system, tested and confirmed operational. Song nodded, her eyes never leaving her ship. The Baekdu represented humanity's answer to those who looked down on their technology. While Confederation ships gleamed like jewels, the Baekdu lurked like a shark, dark and dangerous. The bridge crew took their stations as Song made her way through the ship's corridors. Unlike the spacious, luxurious passages of Confederation vessels, the Baekdu's interior was compact and practical. Every cubic meter served a purpose, whether for crew quarters, ammunition storage, or system redundancy. Lieutenant Taeyum Park looked up from his weapons console as Song entered the bridge. Holographic displays showed the status of every gun, every ammunition feed, and every targeting system. "Final weapons check complete, Captain. All railgun batteries report green. Point defense grid at full capacity." Song settled into her command chair, running her hands over the familiar controls. The bridge hummed with power as systems came online one by one. Through the reinforced viewports, she could see the last of the maintenance crews departing. "They really think we're primitive," Park said quietly, monitoring the weapon systems. His fingers danced over the controls, running one last diagnostic. "The Confederation observers called our railguns charming antiques during the inspection." A small smile played across Song's face. "Let them," she replied, watching as the final docking clamps released. "They'll learn soon enough that effectiveness doesn't always require complexity." The Baekdu's engines came to life, their deep thrum resonating through the hull. Unlike the near-silent drives of Confederation ships, the fusion engines made their power known. Song could feel the strength in them, raw and ready. "Navigation, take us out," she ordered. "Nice and slow. Let our friends from the Confederation get a good look at their primitive ally." The destroyer moved with surprising grace for its size, clearing the shipyard with precision. A small group of Confederation observers watched from their own vessel, their expressions a mixture of amusement and pity visible even through the comm screen. "Captain Song," one of them called, "we wish you luck with your patrol duties. Try not to engage any actual threats. Your ship's museum piece weapons might not hold up to modern combat." Song acknowledged them with a polite nod, but her eyes held a glint of steel. "We'll keep that in mind," she responded, then turned to her crew. "All stations, prepare for system exit. Let's show them how a primitive ship handles." The Baekdu's engines roared to full power, pushing the ship forward with acceleration that caught the Confederation observers off guard. The destroyer moved with a speed and agility that seemed impossible for its size, banking smoothly around the observation post. "Weapons test authorized in Sector 4, Song announced. "Lieutenant Park, select a suitable target drone." Park grinned as he activated the targeting systems. A defunct satellite made an excellent target, floating dead in space 2 kilometers out. Target acquired. Railgun 3 has solution. Fire when ready. The ship shuddered slightly as the railgun launched its projectile. There was no beam of light, no visible energy discharge like Confederation weapons, just a solid slug of tungsten, accelerated to terrifying speed. The target drone didn't just break apart. It disintegrated, turned to expanding gas and debris by the sheer kinetic force of impact. "Target destroyed," Park reported, unable to keep the satisfaction from his voice. "Complete structural failure. No fragments larger than 10 centimeters detected." The Confederation observers had fallen silent, their earlier amusement fading as they processed what they'd just witnessed. Song allowed herself a small smile as she ordered the ship to proceed with its patrol route. "Primitives, are we?" she murmured, watching the stars stretch before them. "We'll see about that." Navigation, set course for the outer trade routes. It's time to show the galaxy what primitive weapons can do. The Baekdu accelerated smoothly into the darkness of space, its dark hull swallowing starlight. Behind it, the Confederation observers began urgently transmitting data back to their superiors. Perhaps they realized they had misjudged these humans after all. The emergency alert blared through the Baekdu's bridge, jolting the crew to full alertness. A distress signal pulsed on their screens, its origin point blinking red in the Proxima sector. The message was brief but clear. Pirates had ambushed the Morgan's Hope trading post, and 3 hostile vessels were still in the system. Captain Song leaned forward in her command chair, studying the tactical display. "Time to intercept," she asked, her voice steady despite the tension filling the bridge. 8 minutes at maximum speed, the navigation officer reported. "The pirates are still engaged with the trading post's defensive systems." Song nodded, her expression grim. "Sound battle stations. I want all weapons powered and ready the moment we drop out of faster-than-light travel. Lieutenant Park, begin loading the heavy penetrator rounds." The Baekdu's corridors echoed with the sound of running feet as crew members rushed to their combat positions. In the weapons control center, Park supervised as massive tungsten rounds were loaded into the railgun magazines. "All hands, this is the captain." Song's voice came over the ship's comm system. "We are responding to a distress call at Morgan's Hope. This is not a drill. This is what we trained for. This is what we built this ship for." The Baekdu dropped out of FTL on the outskirts of the system, its sensors immediately picking up the combat zone. 3 sleek pirate vessels circled the trading post like predators, their energy weapons wearing down the station's shields. "Pirates detected," the sensor officer announced. "Confederation-level technology." Shield signatures matched previous raid patterns. Before Song could issue orders, a transmission cut across their communications. "Primitive vessel detected." The pirate leader's voice dripped with amusement. "Your outdated technology is no match for our ships. Surrender and be spared." The bridge crew turned to their captain, waiting for her response. Song's face showed no fear, no hesitation. "Tactical. Do we have firing solutions on all 3 targets?" "Yes, Captain. All railgun batteries have lock." Song's lips curved into a slight smile. "All batteries. Fire at will." The Baekdu shuddered as its railguns roared to life. There was no flash of energy weapons, no brilliant beams of light, just the silent launch of hypervelocity rounds. The pirates, expecting energy weapons they could easily deflect, had no time to react. The first round struck the lead pirate ship just forward of its engine housing. Their energy shields, designed to disperse plasma and laser fire, might as well have been tissue paper against the solid tungsten penetrator moving at near relativistic speed. The round punched through shields and hull alike, leaving a clean hole through which atmosphere and crew vented into space. "Direct hit on target 1, Park reported, his fingers dancing across the weapons console. "Shield penetration confirmed. Hull breach detected." The other pirate ships broke formation, finally recognizing the threat. Their energy weapons lashed out at the Baekdu, but Song had anticipated this. The destroyer's ablative armor, designed specifically to counter energy weapons, absorbed and dispersed the attacks with minimal effect. Minimal damage to outer armor layer, the damage control officer reported. All systems nominal. Target 2 coming about, Park announced. They're trying to bring their broadside weapons to bear. Song's voice remained calm. Roll ship 15 degrees port. Give them our narrowest profile. Fire solution on target 2 when ready. The Bake-2 moved with surprising agility for its size, presenting a smaller target while its railguns adjusted their aim. The second volley of rounds caught the pirate ship as it turned, tearing through its engine section. Secondary explosions bloomed in silence as the ship's power core destabilized. The third pirate vessel, finally understanding the danger, attempted to flee. Their engines flared bright as they pushed for escape velocity, but Song wasn't about to let them go. Target their engines, she ordered. Disable only if possible. The Confederation will want prisoners to question. Park's next shots were precisely calculated, destroying the pirate ship's main propulsion while leaving their life support intact. The vessel hung dead in space, its crew broadcasting surrender signals even as the Bake-2's point defense weapons tracked their every move. All hostile ships neutralized, Park reported, the pride evident in his voice. Morgan's Hope reports minimal damage to their facilities. Captain Song stood from her command chair, surveying the aftermath displayed on their tactical screens. The primitive Bake-2 had just defeated 3 ships that the Confederation's finest had struggled against, and they'd done it in less than 5 minutes of combat. Send word to Confederation Command, she ordered. Inform them that the pirate threat in this sector has been addressed, and request containment units for prisoners. As the crew carried out their orders, Song allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. The pirates had learned the hard way that primitive didn't mean ineffective. She had a feeling the Confederation would be looking at human technology very differently from now on. Sometimes, she mused quietly, the old ways work best. The Confederation's central analysis chamber buzzed with activity as dozens of experts pored over the battle recordings from Morgan's Hope. The holographic displays showed the engagement from multiple angles, playing and replaying the brief but decisive combat in slow motion. Admiral Daeho Kim stood in the center of it all, watching the tungsten rounds from the Bake-2 tear through the pirates' shields as if they weren't even there. His earlier dismissal of human technology now seemed like a tremendous oversight. Play it again, he ordered, focusing on the moment of impact. Slow it down to 1/10 speed. The scene unfolded before them once more. The pirate ship's shields glowed brilliantly as they deflected energy weapons from the trading post's defenses. Then the Bake-2's rounds struck. No flash, no energy signature, just pure kinetic force that passed through the energy shields without resistance. A young analyst approached the admiral, holding a data tablet. "Sir, we've completed the initial analysis of the Bake-2's armor composition. It's remarkable in its simplicity." Kim took the tablet, scanning through the findings. The humans had created a layered armor system that could absorb and dissipate energy weapons through ablation. While Confederation ships relied on complex shield matrices, the humans had simply found a way to let their ships take the hit and shrug it off. "Prepare the briefing," Kim ordered. "The Council needs to see this immediately." Hours later, the Council chamber was packed with representatives from every Confederation species. The tension in the room was palpable as Admiral Kim took his place at the center podium. "Distinguished Council members," he began, activating the chamber's main display. "What you are about to see will change everything we thought we knew about human military technology." The battle recording played out above their heads. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber as they watched the Bake-2's devastating performance. Kim waited for the initial shock to subside before continuing. "The humans didn't build their ships to match our technology," he explained, highlighting key moments in the battle. "They built them to exploit its weaknesses. Their kinetic weapons bypass our standard shields completely, and their armor absorbs energy weapons remarkably well." One council member stood, his crystalline form catching the light. "But their technology is centuries behind ours. How is this possible?" Kim brought up a technical analysis of the Baekdu's weapons. That's just it. They never tried to catch up to our technology level. Instead, they looked at our defenses and asked themselves a simple question. How can we get past them? The Admiral moved through his presentation, showing detailed breakdowns of human military design philosophy. Their railguns launch solid projectiles at speeds approaching that of light. Our shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, can't stop physical objects moving at those velocities. It's not that they couldn't develop energy weapons. They chose not to. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some members argued heatedly, while others sat in stunned silence. The humans hadn't been primitive at all. They'd been practical. There's more, Kim continued, silencing the chamber. Their armor technology, which we dismissed as crude, is specifically designed to counter our weapons. The ablative layers absorb and dissipate energy weapons, while the underlying structure remains intact. They built their defenses around our attacks. A senior council member rose slowly. Are you suggesting, Admiral, that we have fundamentally misjudged human military capability? Kim nodded grimly. Not just their capability, their entire approach to space combat. While we focused on developing more powerful energy weapons and stronger shields, they looked for ways to bypass both. The Baekdu isn't primitive. It's purpose-built to defeat our most advanced technology. The implications sank in across the chamber. The humans had never been trying to catch up to Confederation technology. They had been developing counters to it all along. What do you recommend, Admiral? Asked the council leader. Kim straightened his uniform. I recommend we immediately begin joint military exercises with the Terran Defense Force. We have much to learn from each other. Their approach to problem solving. It's different from anything we've seen before. As the council debated the proposal, Kim watched the battle recording one final time. The Baekdu's victory wasn't just about superior tactics or surprise. It represented a fundamentally different way of thinking about space combat. Sometimes, he murmured, echoing Captain Song's words, the old ways work best. The humans had proved that effectiveness didn't require complexity. They had taken basic physics and turned it into an art of war. And in doing so, they had earned something far more valuable than the Confederation's respect. They had earned its attention. The Confederation Military Academy's main lecture hall was filled to capacity. Officers from a dozen different species sat attentively as Captain Mayra Song stood at the podium, the Baekdu's combat footage playing behind her on the massive display screen. Look at the pirate vessel's shield response, she said, freezing the image at the moment of impact. See how the energy field remains active even as our round penetrates. The shield never failed. It simply wasn't designed to stop physical objects moving at these speeds. A Confederation officer raised his hand. But surely the energy required to accelerate projectiles to such velocities is inefficient compared to our weapon systems. Song smiled, pulling up the Baekdu's power consumption charts. That's the beauty of it. Once the round is accelerated, it carries its own energy. No need for continuous power draw like energy weapons require. The lecture was just one of many now being conducted across Confederation space. After the Baekdu's stunning success, the Confederation had formally requested human assistance in their anti-piracy operations. The Terran Defense Force responded by deploying a full squadron of destroyers, all built in the same practical style as the Baekdu. In the 3 months since the joint operations began, pirate activity had dropped to levels not seen in decades. The raiders simply couldn't counter ships that ignored their defensive advantages. Your ship still seems so basic, another officer commented during a practical demonstration session. No secondary shield matrices, no backup energy weapon systems. Song led the group through the Baekdu's engineering section. Basic doesn't mean ineffective, she explained, patting the thick armor plating. Every system on this ship serves a specific purpose. We don't add features just because we can. The results spoke for themselves. In the latest engagement, 3 human destroyers had eliminated a pirate fleet that had been terrorizing an entire sector. The pirates' sophisticated shields had meant nothing against walls of accelerated tungsten. In the Academy's tactical simulation room, Song watched as Confederation officers practiced new combat maneuvers. They were learning to think differently, to see past their own technological assumptions. Energy shields stop energy weapons, she repeated, watching them work. They do nothing against a tungsten rod moving at relativistic speeds. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. The changes weren't just happening in the classroom. Confederation shipyards have begun incorporating human design elements into their new vessels. Hybrid ships emerge, combining energy weapons with kinetic systems, sophisticated shields with ablative armor. "We've been caught in our own echo chamber," admitted Admiral Kim during a strategy session, "always building better versions of the same technology, never questioning our basic assumptions." The pirates learned this lesson the hard way. A massive raid on a colonial shipping lane ended in disaster when they encountered a joint human Confederation patrol. Their energy shields, once their greatest advantage, became meaningless as human rounds tore through them, while Confederation energy weapons prevented their escape. Back aboard the Baekdu, Song reviewed reports from across Confederation space. Pirate activity had dropped to historic lows. Those few raiders who still operated quickly surrendered when human ships appeared in their sectors. "They called us primitive," Lieutenant Park remarked during a quiet moment on the bridge. "Now they're all trying to copy our primitive technology." Song nodded, watching the stars through the view screen. "Being underestimated was our greatest advantage. It let us develop our technology without interference, focus on what worked rather than what looked impressive." The Confederation's attitude toward human innovation had shifted completely. Where once they saw primitive vessels worthy only of pity, now they saw elegant solutions to complex problems. The humans hadn't tried to copy advanced alien technology. They had found ways to defeat it. "The best weapon," Song told her crew during their evening briefing, "is the one your enemy can't defend against. It doesn't matter how advanced their technology is if they can't stop a simple piece of metal moving fast enough." As the Baekdu patrolled its assigned sector, its crew could take pride in knowing they had changed the galaxy's understanding of what constituted advanced technology. Sometimes, the old ways really did work best. The pirates had learned this truth the hard way. The Confederation had learned it through careful study. And humanity had proven that true innovation wasn't about complexity, it was about effectiveness. The grand celebration hall of the Confederation sparkled with lights from 1,000 stars, visible through its transparent dome. The first anniversary of the Baekdu's historic engagement drew together officers from across the galaxy. Human destroyers floated alongside Confederation vessels in the space above, a visual symbol of their new partnership. Captain Song stood by the observation window, watching a new class of hybrid ships during their test flights. These vessels combined the best of both worlds, human practical design with Confederation advanced technology. Their hulls bore both the sleek lines of Confederation aesthetics and the practical armor of human engineering. "Quite a change from last year," Lieutenant Park said, joining her at the window. "Remember when they used to smile at our primitive ships?" Below them in the shipyards, workers from a dozen species collaborated on the next generation of patrol vessels. Human engineers taught their Confederation counterparts about ablative armor and kinetic weapon systems, while Confederation scientists shared their knowledge of advanced power systems and sensor technology. Admiral Kim approached them, holding 3 glasses of champagne. His uniform now bore both Confederation and human military decorations. "1 year," he said, handing them each a glass. "1 year since we learned that our assumptions about technology were completely wrong." The celebration hall filled with military officers, scientists, and diplomats from both human and Confederation worlds. The atmosphere was warm and genuine. Gone were the condescending smiles and barely hidden smirks of the past. "Look at the tactical display," Park pointed out. A holographic map showed the dramatic reduction in pirate activity across Confederation space. Red dots marking raider attacks had dwindled to almost nothing. Song nodded, remembering the battles that had led to this peace. "The pirates never expected us to think differently," she said. "They were so focused on defeating energy weapons that they forgot about basic physics." Admiral Kim raised his glass, drawing everyone's attention. The hall fell quiet as he prepared to speak. "1 year ago," he began, "we thought we were accepting a primitive species into our ranks. We looked at their technology and saw only what was missing. No energy weapons, no advanced shields, none of the systems we considered essential." He gestured to the ships visible through the dome. "Instead, we found teachers. The humans showed us that progress isn't always about complexity. They reminded us that sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective." Captain Song smiled, raising her own glass. "To cooperation," she replied, "and to learning from each other." The hall echoed with the sound of glasses clinking together. The celebration continued as officers shared stories and experiences. Human crew members demonstrated their combat techniques to fascinated Confederation warriors, while Confederation scientists excitedly discussed new hybrid technologies with human engineers. In the shipyard below, the next generation of Confederation vessels took shape. They carried railguns alongside energy weapons, ablative armor supporting shield generators. But more importantly, they represented a new way of thinking about space combat and technology. "The pirates never stood a chance," Park mused, watching a demonstration of the new hybrid weapon systems. "Not once we started working together." Som watched as human and Confederation crews mingled freely, sharing jokes and stories. "The Baekdu's success opened more than just military doors," she observed. "It created a true partnership between humanity and the stars." Admiral Kim nodded in agreement. "And to think, it all started because we underestimated you. Sometimes the best discoveries come from our greatest mistakes." As the celebration continued into the night, the stars above seemed to shine brighter. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Humanity had proven that true advancement didn't always mean moving forward. Sometimes it meant looking at old problems in new ways. The Baekdu floated proudly among the ships above, its dark hull reflecting starlight. It was no longer seen as primitive or outdated, but as a symbol of innovation and cooperation. In the end, humanity hadn't needed to catch up to Confederation technology. They had simply needed to show that there was more than one path to the stars. And as the celebration drew to a close, everyone knew that this was just the beginning. A new era had dawned, built not on complexity or advanced technology, but on the simple principle that sometimes the old ways really did work best.